So I want to introduce Derek Gardner and Eddie Bayard, two members of Jazz Heritage Orchestra, with us today in the studio here on the campus of CSU. And we're going to talk a little bit about Jazz Heritage, their role in Jazz Heritage, and things they do as it relates to their own careers, how they got involved with Jazz Heritage, and the work they do with teaching some of the master classes to our younger generations and why that's important. But before we start, we want to introduce, I guess we'll start with the person on our far left, Derek Gardner. He comes, I guess, the furthest distance. I don't know if DeMonte comes further, Iowa or Winnipeg, Canada, but I do know that Iowa costs more. Okay, I do know that. But no, all jokes aside, Derek, can you tell us a little bit about you, about yourself?
Well, I am currently the Babs Asper Professor of Jazz Performance and Jazz Trumpet at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Canada, at the Marcel A. Desoutel Faculty of Music. And I've been there, this is my third year there so far, and I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and both my parents are musicians. My father's a jazz trumpeter, my mother's a classical pianist and organist. And I just always come up in music and developed my career in jazz, you know. And I was a freelance jazz musician in New York for about 11, 12 years before I decided to get into education. And I started teaching, and through teaching, I saw the importance of a lot of things, you know, history, like we were just talking about, the historical significance of jazz in America, and the importance of the whole culture of jazz as far as like its theoretical significance, is music theory, as America's contribution to the entirety of music, you know, as compared to European classical music. Jazz came out of from a musical theory standpoint, it came out of Western European classical music, and we took that and made it into something totally new and fresh, and so I've been striving to teach all those aspects and elements of jazz, and you know, keep the music going forward. You know.
Now,
So,
I understand you're an accomplished musician. You have a number of albums and CDs and tracks out, so we don't want to leave that part out. 'Cause I want people to know that people who participate in Jazz Heritage are not just your run-of-the-mill musicians. They are some of the greatest musicians in the world, and we're honored and blessed to have them as part of what we do here at CSU. So I just want to, if you want to plug some of the work that you've done, you know, want to make sure we get that in.
thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, well, I was my first professional gig was with the Count Basie Orchestra, and through that band, I was able to travel and see the world, and I was able to move to New York and work with all sorts of bands. You know, Village Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, recorded with Stefan Harris, and played with Kenny Barron's group for a little while, and then this really wonderful experience out of New York. And I was able to start my own band called the Jazz Prophets, which is a sextet, and which includes my brother Vincent Gardner, who's lead trombonist with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, and we've been in existence for the last maybe 22 years or so, and we have 3 CDs. The latest one was released in 2009, called Echoes of Ethnicity, and so the other 2 was prior to that one was A Ride to the Other Side, and the first one was a Slim Goody, and so yeah, I've been pretty active, I guess, in my career.
Okay. And you've been with Jazz Heritage how long?
Oh man, since 2003, I believe. I've known Dennis longer than that, but he was finally able to kind of squeezed me into the fold, you know, around 2003, 2004, and it's been a great ride ever since, you know.
And I'm blessed to sit next to, they call him Sweet Eddie Bayard. When I first heard the name, I know jazz musicians have these different names, and then I actually heard him play, and I can understand why they call him that, because he looks so unassuming sometimes, but he's a really deep individual. I mean, I've got a chance to know him over the years. But Eddie, tell the audience about who you are and some of the things that you've been involved in.
Well, my name is Eddie Bayard, and freelance jazz saxophonist from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My dad was a bebop trumpeter. I went to Berklee School of Music, studied there for a few years, and then joined Pharrell Whitted, trumpet player out of Indianapolis. Joined his group for a number of years, still with him. Ralph Peterson, I just joined recently, sextet, drummer from New York. And, you know, got a couple records out. I'm not teaching. Been under these cats like Derek Gardner, you know, still learning, you know. I remember going to New York and staying with them and just learning the music, and, you know, I'm still in that stage of just learning, but, you know, I play around with a lot of groups and, you know, like I said, Ralph Peterson, Pharrell Whitted, with a number of
You had a number of
groups.
recordings, aren't you? You have a number.
I got a couple. Yeah, a lot. I'm on Ralph's record. Pharrell, he has 3 records out. Then I'm on a 4th one getting ready to come out, and Mark Lomax, avant-garde drummer. So I kind of go into various styles of the music.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the questions I wanted to know as a musician, when did you know you had it? That this was something you were going to do? I mean, because I've picked up an instrument, I picked up a piano, and I picked it up, but tried to play it, and then a guitar, but I didn't have it. So I knew that wasn't my thing. But what did you know as artists that you had this special talent that just was above what the average person or most of us might even ascribe to?
You know, I still don't think I have it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I heard both of you play it. You have it.
I mean, it's like it's kind of like a search, man.
Yeah,
I think for artists, it's like you don't think you have it, but it's like you're searching, like something. The instrument compels you to search.
Yeah.
You get this curiosity, and I think this desire, and you keep going for it. You might hear it and be like, wow, okay, you know, and you have, I think you just have I know for me, I can speak for myself, you have a desire to pursue for it, but
well, most humble people, like Eddie, and I like to think of myself as very humble to the music.
Yeah, of course.
You never say you have it because it's like Eddie said, it's a life's quest.
Yeah.
You're always striving for that. You're always striving for perfection, but you're never going to reach it.
Yeah.
You know, you might get close to it, but you never reach it. And if you ever hear somebody that said, "Oh, I'm it," you know, then usually that person can't play. So, but I will say there was like when I was in, I think 11th or 12th grade in high school, I knew that I wanted to be a jazz musician. You know, I knew that, and I went straight for that. You know, ever since then. And
because the reason I asked that is because I know a lot of us, I mean, I played sports, and I knew at a certain point that I could do this. I didn't know, again, that drive for perfection, I didn't know how it all turned out. You know, and some of us stop at high school, some of us stop at college, and some few fortunate ones get paid and make it to the pros. And so you have these abilities that you see amongst your peers that you grow up with, that your abilities are somewhat different than somebody else's. And that's why I'm saying how you recognize that you had it. And you kind of answered that by saying your desire to pursue something was so important. You know, that desire to be able to.
To me, man, it's like art. You know, it's an internal thing. It's this internal fire that goes on that pursue, like you want to be the best that you can be. You know, you want to make yourself good as a person, like to, you know, I guess in a sense of you're not like competing with anybody else. It's just a thing of like trying to get to what you hear. And you know your thing. You have people like along the way to help you. Like I mean, along my path, man, I had cats. I was fortunate to have cats like Derek. You know, he has a saxophone player in his band, Rob Dixon. I used to go up to New York and just, you know, when I was in college, I would go up there as much as possible. These cats would be like, yo, you know, you got a place to stay. You know, we talk about the music. They take me out to jam sessions. And they knew I was younger. I was influenced by them. So, you know, they would show me things, show me how the life is. And I think that's how, you know, like jazz is more of a community, a communal kind of thing, you know, and it's like, you know, cats help you out to get to your style or get to your thing, you know, help you along the way, you know.
Because one of the things I was thinking about, as your role with Jazz Heritage Orchestra, and I know we're doing this, and these interviews are concerning the Ellington piece that we do, and also the Treasures of Jazz. We're trying to get more concerts and get more international recognition for the band. But you are in a unique position that I, as a person who watch you, as I watch the 17-piece band, I see musicians from all over the country who are at the top of their game, you know, to sort of speak. Maybe not, as you said, reach perfection in their game, as you say. But as you're sitting on the bandstand and you're playing with these individuals, how does it all work? Because I know people got egos, people got their own styles. And I know Dennis is the straw boss, as they call him. But, you know, I watch this and I say, like, wow. I guess to me, I kind of equate it to a sports team, you know, in a lot of ways. You got all these superstars sitting there, but just because you have a bunch of superstars, don't mean you're gonna have a great team.
It's a communal. It's community, man. It's, jazz is communal, man. It's like I said, you know, these cats. I mean, there's a certain like reverence I'm gonna hold for Derek. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, I grew up kind of like under these cats. You know, is amongst a lot of other cats. So, you know, when they say something, you know, I listen. You know, I mean, or you know, everybody kind of knows each other's playing styles, and we, I guess, coincide to make it, just make it work.
Make it all glued. Well, you know, even in added to that, there's a pretty strict large ensemble etiquette that is always followed. You know, and you know, like we all like everybody has to follow their lead player within a section. You know, then when it's the full ensemble playing, everybody has to follow the lead trumpet for the phrasing and articulation, and the lead trumpet and the drummer are like linked together like hand and glove. You know, so once they get their link together, and then we're all listening to the lead trumpet for the phrasing and articulation. We listen for the drummer. Everybody listens to the drummer for the time. You know, it just kind of glues together from that. And then you and on top of that, what Eddie's talking about is the reverence that you have for like all the different cats in the band, the way that they play, and you're reacting to what they're doing, and then you listen to what somebody else is doing, and then you know, when you hear Dennis, you know, play a certain way that's on the page, it might be written a certain way, but Dennis might phrase it totally different, and we're looking at it. Eddie might be looking at it like this. He's like, "Oh, okay, we're doing it like that.
Right.
I like that better. So we're gonna change. We're gonna make that change. You know, and that's what makes, and those little things is what makes the Jazz Heritage Orchestra sound different than other big bands. Is that those intricate stylings that we bring to each arrangement. You know, Basie had their way of doing things. Ellington had their way of doing things, and just in Jazz Heritage, you know, just you know, comparatively to those bands, are like we're like in you know, maybe like kindergarten compared to like them being like distinguished professors, you know, and we're pulling our cues from Basie and Ellington and Earl Hines, big band, or even Fletcher Henderson, or some people like that. We're calling upon all the legacy of the big band tradition and bringing that into jazz heritage and coming up with something very unique.
Right.
You know,
like with Duke. You know, Duke had individuals in his group. You know, and this I think this group is like a bunch of individuals that kind of like come together, and make it make it happen.
No, one of the things that the mission of Jazz Heritage Orchestra has always been to educate and do master classes for the children who are coming up and the young people who are coming, young musicians. And as a musician who has, in your case, Derek, who's mentored, say Eddie in this case, how do you see that in terms of when you guys come in and you're doing these master classes and the young people, because as you talk with them and mentor them, what are some of the conversations that you guys have with some of the young people? Because I watch how they seem to have reverence for you guys, you know, in terms of, you know, when people want to say that young people don't pay attention to older people, that's not the case when I see these young people come in. They're almost silent because they're listening and soaking up every word that they're listening to you guys.
Well, you know, there a lot of times when you take something like this big band etiquette that I was talking about, a lot of times the young musician doesn't know anything about that, you know, because they might be coming out of the high school band program. Their only experience might be is playing in a concert band or a wind ensemble or in a marching band, where none of these jazz band techniques are being used, and their band director might not know anything about jazz, you know, but has a jazz band because the principal of the high school said, we need you to start a jazz band. And so he goes, I don't know what to do, but okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and here we go.
Here we go.
You know, so,
and we call it jazz.
Yeah, right, you know, and he get a couple of arrangements, and he directs the arrangements like it's a marching band chart or a concert band thing, you know. So when they come to us, one of the smartest things that any band director can do is to come to a festival like this and learn how to direct a jazz band, learn how to communicate certain things to the individual students, and how to develop their jazz band. And so when we mentor these students, we're talking to them about phrasing and articulation, about the importance of the lead players, straight down the middle, the lead horn players, trumpet, trombone, and alto saxophone, leading their sections, and all the members of the section listening to their lead players for the articulation and phrasing, and then when it's full ensemble, everybody listens to the lead trumpet, you know, for the articulation and phrasing. Then we get to the lead trumpet, say, okay, lead trumpet, man, you're on top. You are now responsible for the whole band. It's, you know, if you mess up, then it's not. You know, it's your fault. Everybody else who played didn't know right, but if you split your note, you messed up for the whole band. You know,
that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, you know, and once everybody understands their role, they focus in, and all of a sudden they sound better. You know, and they take that back to their schools, and then they're able to, you know, and able to develop their program, you know, their jazz program. You know,
I think as musicians, how do you feel about the movement that they seem to be taking music out of the schools and some of those types of things? Because I think as an academician on the other side, I think those programs are important because they allow people to learn discipline, they allow them to learn math skills, they allow them to learn a lot of things that they're trying to cram into classes. You know, I was kind of amazed when my daughter's 14, they're no longer teaching cursive writing. And so so I'm saying, so how do people learn to write? You know, so I'm saying, so if you're not teaching them cursive, and the only thing she knows how to do is sign her name, she doesn't know how to write in cursive.
So
why is it gonna be an X?
Yeah, exactly.
It's because computers,
yeah,
so everything is text now.
Yeah, everybody texting stuff.
Wow.
And so I'm saying,
my daughter's doing that.
Where
That's crazy.
Where does that leave us? If you know, and I'm old school because I'm still going to libraries and looking at books. You know, she said, "Why I gotta go to the library when I can just put it up on Google?"
Right.
You know,
Right.
So, so I just get some brief thoughts about that before we wrap up, and I got one or two other questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, this is changing, man.
Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Boy.
I mean, to take music out, I think it's bad. I mean, you know, music does so much for an individual. Even if you're not going to pursue this, even if you just learn to just love it, you know, music in general. You know what I mean? It just does, like you said, it does things for your mind, the intellect, but also the intuitive side of the person. I mean, just the soul, you know, just everything, you know.
Music will, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, but music will keep you from having a stroke.
Okay.
You know, I'm not a doctor. You know,
It's a healing force.
It's a healing force. The reason I say this is because a very good friend of ours, a saxophone player, Wes Anderson, had a stroke. He actually had 2 strokes, and I remember that first one he had, and part of his therapy was relearning how to play
the instrument.
And when he started relearning how to play, it was like all those wires, they started getting rewiring up in his head. And when he came back like full force, man, he sounded better than he did before the first stroke.
He was killing then.
Yeah.
You know,
and
but
he recently had the second one about almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening. He's rewiring all that stuff. I would, morbidly thinking that he would have checked out if he hadn't been a musician.
You know, that's crazy. You know, now that you say that, Rahsaan was the same way.
Who?
Rahsaan Roland Kirk.
Rahsaan Roland Kirk.
He came back after his stroke. He was playing more horn
right.
than where he was. You know, I mean, it's proof in the nutshell that music is a spiritual and it's a healing force, man. And for that to be removed, I mean, you could see life right now and you can see how all this technology, which is beautiful, but at the same time, man, it's like a lot of disconnect, a lot of, it's just weird. And for music to be removed from kids, and especially the music that they're given to nowadays that you hear on the radio and all of this stuff.
They're not learning music.
It's horrible. There's this one guy, hip hop dude, and he said it. He said, "Man, this stuff is demonic." Wow. I mean, take it how you take. You know what I'm saying? Like, take it how you take it.
I'm able to kind of look at this also. I think from a unique perspective. You know, having experienced the Canadian culture for the last 3 years or so, and I didn't realize how much different Canadians are than compared to Americans. And I'm not, not that I can't trying to be anti-American, but they really have like a different way of looking at things. And the reason I just directed toward this particular subject is that they're in total support of the arts.
Right.
They have music in all their high schools. They have full, flourishing music programs, and particularly to instrumental music. I've done clinics at several of these high schools in Winnipeg. Some of them have 2 and 3 jazz bands, you know, and each of those bands serve as a feeder system to the top band, you know. But it's flourishing, man, and as a result, those kids that come out of those high schools into college, they are just, you know, very attentive, and so, you know, you say something.
They hang on every word.
Yeah, they're like writing down. You say, and in 1894, 1894, okay, this happened. Okay, okay. Now this also happened in 1894 when this, that, and the other, blah blah blah. You're like, yeah, that's a good point. You bring that up. And they very engaging, very intelligent students. You know, not to say that we aren't, American students aren't, but it's just a difference in the culture where they think about it seems like they're thinking about the entire good of its people, and they said, you know, music is going to be good for everybody. Let's make it so everybody, and it used to be like that in America.
Yeah.
You know, there was music and they covered everything. They covered the math, the sciences, arts. They covered everything was
Physical
covered.
ed, all those
Yeah,
things.
and I think we are a product of that.
Right.
And we're seeing the difference in those kids who are not a product of that.
I went to Europe a couple years ago with a hip hop band. We were just doing like, you know, hip hop clubs and stuff like that. And these kids, we were playing like jazz over hip hop stuff, and the kids like knew. They weren't jazz musicians. They weren't whatever, you know, but they knew what samples we were playing from because they knew the jazz records. They like still knew, and these are hip hop, you know, heads or whatever. They still knew, okay, that was, you know, sample from Benny Maupin or, you know what I'm saying, whatever, you know, and it was like, wow, you know, when you come back to America and, you know, you go to the normal, you know, it's just because like over there, they grew up with that. They know that, you know, they know all forms of music, you know, it's all given to them. Here, it's like this separation. You know,
I'm happy to have you guys in the studio, and I don't want to take too much more of your time because I can go on all day because I'm listening to two of the greats, in my mind, two of the greats in terms of jazz music. Because I have to say, quite honestly, when Dr. Mims asked me to take over Black Studies, and then he proceeded to get sicker, and then he passed on, and then when I became the director, I knew virtually nothing about jazz as you guys were playing it, you know. My sampling was Kenny G and some of the other folks. But as I got a chance to know the business side of it, but also to know you guys as musicians, I learned a great deal. So you guys have educated me every day. I sit down in Dennis and I'm able to talk a little bit more intelligently about what's going on. And so you guys have really blessed me in that regard. But also, I want to thank you because you really blessed a lot of the kids here and young people here in Cleveland, from Music Settlement to Shaw High School to the middle school. I'll never forget the day that Dennis took you guys to do that master class at, I believe it was Heritage Middle School in East Cleveland. And to watch those couple hundred kids who had never seen a big band. And really, and what was amazing to me was they really didn't know what to do with the music when you first started playing. They didn't know whether to applaud, clap, but as they got into it and then started to ask questions, and you let them know it was more about the discipline. Because a lot of people want to get on stage. Say, I want to do what Derek Gardner do or what Eddie Baird do, but I want to do it in one lesson.
Right.
And it doesn't, and you guys were calm and patient with them, say it doesn't happen in one lesson. You know, if you're not practicing 4 or 5 hours a day, or you're not doing this, or you're not doing that, you're not going to get it. You know, in terms of what, and I think that's a lot of what the younger generation don't get, that it doesn't happen instantaneously in this generation that we've raised to be instantaneous.
Not in the whole, it's still happening. Like there's still some young cats. You know, we definitely got some young soldiers on the come up. You know, it's still going to be around. It's just not on the whole, and it's for people. And my concern is not so much the musicians. I think the musicians are always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's like our audience. Is there going to be like audience for these musicians that's coming? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's always. I mean, you got great cats coming out of here like Johnny Cochran, a couple other dudes. You know, they're always. I remember when they were those little kids sitting, you know, in the thing. So you know, it's always going to be soldiers, but.
Well, we definitely have to be creative in building the audience, you know. And unfortunately, the audience is controlled and manhandled by the music industry. But there are devices that we have at hand that we can use to build our audience, like through social media. You know, that seems to be our best defense as far as that's concerned, because there have been a number of groups that I just, you know, viewed on the Grammys recently that just through that grassroots movement got their stuff out there. Like what Snarky Puppy. Weren't they like more of a grassroots kind of thing?
For sure.
They weren't. They had no connection, I think, to the record companies, and they just like blasted the internet with all this stuff. and I think they won a Grammy.
Oh yeah,
they won a
the
Grammy.
one with Lila Hathaway. I think.
Yeah, and they won, and a couple other groups that were like that. They were just grassroots.
I mean,
You know,
even
so
if you look at hip hop, the dude that won all the Grammys,
yeah,
Macklemore.
yeah, right.
He's
Yeah.
a straight independent artist.
Yeah,
That's the first time that's ever happened in that genre of music. So, what he's saying, elaborate on what he's saying, jazz is definitely gonna have to
that's right.
go that way. It can go that way and build. So, I mean, to see that indie, like, kind of movement do what it's doing, pretty amazing.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming into the studio today, and as our audience can see, that these are not only talented musicians, but these are well-schooled individuals, academically, socially, and culturally, in terms of music. But to me, they represent individuals who maintain that Afrocentric tradition within the music, but can play it for mass groups, mass cultures, those type of. But the most important part are educating others about jazz music, not just the musicians, but the teachers of the music and audiences, such as myself. You know, because when people come to hear Jazz Heritage Orchestra play, one of the things I do is pay attention to what people say after the concert, and they say, "Man, I didn't know that sounded like that," or "I didn't know that they could do that," or those types of comments that people have. And I also seen that, you know, not only with our white audiences and our brown audiences, but among our black audiences, a lot of times, the pride. They talk to them. When I get my church, for example, they said, "When is Jazz Heritage coming back?" You know, they already got their tickets. You know, so you're building audiences.
Right.
And our pastor told me Sunday. He said, "I'm talking to 2 other prominent pastors in town, and we want to bring Jazz Heritage here to do a sacred concert, you know, to play some of the sacred music, you know, in terms of those types of things." So the audience is building. But I want to thank both of you for sticking with Jazz Heritage through some troubling times, some financial times, because that loyalty I appreciate, you know, in terms. But more importantly, Black Studies and the community has been enriched by the presence, because they don't get to see musicians of your caliber every day, you know, in terms of what's going on, and see them all on the same stage at the same time is really a treat. And even if you guys don't recognize how important that is, you know, I know you do, but our audiences have great, because they do talk about you guys. You're building a big following here within the city. So I want to thank you guys for coming into the studios today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.